Hello everyone, thank you for joining us today. Welcome to this webinar on KA2 Strategic Partnerships in the field of adult education and vocational educational training. This is a pre-recorded webinar with a live webinar taking place on the 14th of March 2017. My name is Anna Mahmood, and together with my colleague Zoe Dyson-Falconer, we will be your presenters today. We are assistant project managers working within the Erasmus Plus team at Ecoris UK. This webinar is aimed at applicants looking to apply for funding under the decentralised strand of KA2, known as Strategic Partnerships in the field of adult education and/or vocational educational training. This webinar will primarily focus on how to complete the application form, as well as providing you with some hints and tips to help you with the application process. So, just to give you an overview of what I will be covering in today's webinar, I will start by providing you with a quick introduction to KA2 and what funding is available. Following this, I will update you on a few new Erasmus Plus programme requirements, which may or may not affect your application process. Moving on to the main focus of the session, the completion of the KA2 application form, also known as the application eForm. I will first talk you through what needs to be completed before you begin completing your application form, and then Zoe, my colleague, will take you through how to complete the actual application form. This will include step-by-step guidance on how to complete certain sections, validating the form, and showing you how to utilise the distance calculator. Finally, after rounding up some key points, I will run through the next steps following the submission of your application and remind you of how to contact us for additional support in the run-up to the deadline. Within this webinar, I will be referring to the Erasmus Plus Programme Guide. In all instances, the Programme Guide I will be referring to is version 2 of the 2017 Programme Guide, so please bear this in mind in reference to page numbers. Before we begin, we would like to clarify the position of the Erasmus Plus programme within the UK following the results of the EU referendum. The UK is still confirmed as a member state and fully participating in the Erasmus Plus programme. Applications that are successful under the 2017 call will be awarded funding for the duration of the project. For the latest updates and press releases regarding this matter, please subscribe to the monthly Erasmus Plus newsletter on the Erasmus Plus website. The Erasmus Plus programme is constantly developing. There have been several changes announced this year that may or may not affect your application for funding. Firstly, there has been further information provided regarding the Erasmus Plus Charter for Higher Education and its requirement within the programme. The Erasmus Plus Charter for Higher Education provides a quality framework for Erasmus Plus funded activities carried out by higher education institutions, also known as HEIs. Please be aware that in order to participate in Erasmus Plus projects, higher education institutions, such as universities and other organisations whose core work is in the field of higher education, must hold the ECHE. The Charter is not required for further education colleges or organisations offering training to groups and/or individuals, as well as distance-based learning. HEIs from programme countries participating as funded partners in Erasmus Plus projects also require the ECHE accreditation. Secondly, an update in regards to Serbia's status within the Erasmus Plus programme. Serbia will now appear in all eForms as a programme country. However, under KA2, Serbia is still a partner country. There is also clarification on the subject of double funding. Organisations that are receiving funding from other sources to deliver similar project activities, including other EU and national funding programmes, will need to provide information about this in the application form. This will need to include details on where the funding is coming from and the amounts. Finally, multiplier events can now take place in the countries of associated partners, as long as they are justified and approved at assessment stage. This is a new rule for 2017. As you hopefully are already aware, in this session we will be focusing on KA2 Strategic Partnerships, Cooperation for Innovation, and the exchange of good practices. KA2 is all about cooperation and collaboration. It offers opportunities for organisations from different countries and different sectors to work together to share good practice and innovation in order to improve the provision for learners. The UK National Agency, which is a partnership between the British Council and Equorus UK, is responsible for managing strategic partnerships projects, the decentralised action under Key Action 2. Strategic partnerships in the field of adult education and VET are managed by the team at Equorus UK. Equorus is an international company providing research, consultancy and management services. We specialise in economic, social and spatial development and aim to deliver real benefit to society through the work we do. Our clients include the EU, national government institutions, private companies and not-for-profit organisations. Other types of projects under Key Action 2, such as knowledge and skills sector alliances, are managed centrally by the Executive Agency of the European Commission. We won't be talking about these types of projects during the webinar today, but you can find more information in Part B of the programme guide from page 139 onwards. Moving on to strategic partnerships. Strategic partnerships are cooperation projects which allow organisations to work together to improve the quality of education and training provision, tackle common issues, and share or develop innovative practice. As you are aware, one organisation applies for funding on behalf of the whole partnership, and if the project is approved, this partner has overall responsibility for managing the funding and is accountable to the national agency for the project. Strategic partnerships are flexible in terms of what they can entail and in size. This means that there is flexibility in terms of the activities you can implement, as long as your application can demonstrate that these activities are appropriate to achieve the objectives set out for the project. Projects can be of one of the following two types. Firstly, strategic partnerships developing innovation. These projects are expected to develop innovative outputs and undertake intensive dissemination and exploitation activities. Strategic partnerships supporting innovation can request specific funding for intellectual outputs and multiplier events in order to support the delivery of their objectives. Secondly, strategic partnerships supporting exchange of good practices. The main objective of these projects is to allow organisations to develop and reinforce networks, increase their capacity to operate at a transnational level, and exchange ideas, practices and methods. Depending on their objectives, projects may also develop tangible outputs and are still expected to disseminate the results of their activities in a way that is proportionate to the aims and scope of the project. These results and activities will be co-financed through the standard project management and implementation budget, and no separate funding will be available to develop intellectual outputs or multiplier events. The type of strategic partnership to be developed will need to be selected within the application form. It is therefore important to give careful consideration to the type of project that is best suited to your objectives and the experience and capacity of your partnership. Also, when preparing your project and choosing your partners, it is important to carefully consider the experience and capacity of the participating organisations. Whilst large-scale projects are supported, it is also possible to deliver smaller-scale cooperation projects. The grant will vary depending on the size and scale of the project, and I will talk more about this when we look at the budget section of the application form. There are opportunities to develop strategic partnerships focusing in one field of education and training, or to develop cross-sector projects. However, applications should specify the field that is most relevant to the project, as project relevance is determined at assessment stage as part of the award criteria. You can find more information about this on our website, but in this webinar we will focus specifically on strategic partnerships for adult education and VET. Projects focusing on adult education can deliver a wide range of activities around topics such as developing, testing, adapting, and implementing innovative approaches in learning and teaching methodologies for adult learners, for example, focusing on delivering key competencies, basic skills, and language skills. They can also promote recognition and certification of skills and competencies by referencing them to European and national qualification frameworks and using EU instruments. Additionally, they can improve the accessibility of learning opportunities for adults For example, development of training courses available for adult education teachers, managers, or other adult education staff, or promoting the development of multipurpose learning centres and regional networks of learning providers. And finally, they can focus on providing flexible pathways for adult learners, including validation of their prior learning by practical application and testing of methods for valuing knowledge and competencies acquired through informal and non-formal learning. Where relevant, when devising your project activities, you may want to consult the website of the Electronic Platform for Adult Learning in Europe, also known as EPALE. EPALE is a multilingual open membership online community for teachers, trainers, researchers, policymakers, and anyone else with a professional role in adult learning across Europe. It is set up around the sharing of content related to adult learning, including news, blog posts, resources, and events and courses. The examples provided on this slide are just some ideas. You can also refer to the examples provided in the program guide, page 118 and 190, for inspiration, and you should always ensure your project idea fits with the action priorities listed on pages 120 to 123. Projects focusing on vocational education and training can deliver a wide range of activities around topics such as developing, testing, adapting, and implementing innovative approaches in VET learning and teaching, methodologies, for example, focusing on delivering key competencies, basic skills, and language skills. They can also promote recognition and certification of skills and competencies by referencing them to European and national qualification frameworks and using EU instruments, or they can focus on implementing credit transfer, ECVET, and quality assurance, ECVET, by VET providers. Where relevant, you may want to consult the website of the ECVET Experts UK. This website provides practical online tools for implementing the ECVET principles in practice, such as case studies, online resources, and useful links. The examples provided on this slide again are just some ideas and not an exhaustive list. You can also refer to the guidance provided in the program guide, page 118 and 288 to 290 for inspiration, and you should always ensure your project ideas fits with the action priorities listed on page 120 to page 123. Moving on to objectives and priorities. It is important to link your Key Action 2 project to the programme priorities and show the added value of carrying out your project on a European level. When doing so, it is important to keep the general objectives of the Erasmus Plus programme in mind. More information about this can be found in Part A of the Erasmus Plus programme guide, as well as to remember the following important features. Firstly, recognition and validation of skills and qualifications, for example, using Europass in the field of adult education. Secondly, dissemination and exploitation of project results, for example, the use of the Erasmus Plus logo, as well as the Erasmus Plus project results platform. This is a contractual requirement for all Key Action 2 projects. You should also remember about the open access requirements for educational materials, documents, and media produced through Erasmus Plus. Another important feature is the international dimension, i.e. cooperation with organisations from different countries, alongside multilingualism, by requesting funding for linguistic support for long-term learning, teaching, and training activities if applicable. Also, please bear in mind the equality and inclusion, for example, by facilitating the access to learners with disadvantaged backgrounds and fewer opportunities compared to their peers. And a final feature is protection and safety of participants by making sure all participants are safe and supported during their project activities. In addition to these features, in order to be funded, a strategic partnership must either address at least one horizontal priority for strategic partnership, an overview of which can be found on pages 120 to 121 in the program guide, or at least one specific priority relevant to the field of adult education or VET, an overview which can be found on pages 121 to 123 in the program guide. Where a project addresses a horizontal priority, it is still important to show how the project will impact on the field of adult education or VET. For 2017, projects addressing social inclusion and language learning and teaching will be seen as highly relevant. In all cases, however, projects will need to clearly demonstrate how the project objectives and planned activities will address the selected action priority or priorities. Moving on to KA2 Strategic Partnership. So what is a KA2 Strategic Partnership? One organisation applies to their country's national agency on behalf of the entire partnership. Projects can be of different sizes, but you will need a minimum total of 3 from 3 different programme countries, including the applicant. You can find a list of programme countries in the programme guide on page 23. The lead or applicant organisation must always be from a programme country, though partner countries can participate as partners only if their participation brings clear added value to the project. Projects can last from 12 up to 36 months. You will need to choose the duration of the project at the application stage, and this cannot be changed. However, the latest possible end date is the 31st of August 2020. Projects can be of different sizes, and funding will reflect this as you build up your project budget from a series of unit costs per activity up to a maximum total budget. The maximum budget is a variable amount defined by multiplying €12,500 per month for the duration of the project with a maximum of €450,000 for a 36-month project. There is no formal requirement for match funding in the project budget, although the principle of co-financing applies. Please see page 251 of the programme guide for more information. Once you have completed these steps, you will need to ensure that you register your organisation. Firstly, you will need to register on EU Login, formerly known as ECAS. You are required to register here to use any type of external European Commission tool. We have a video guide on our website which will talk you through how to do this, and you can find the link to it on your handout. You can find the link to it on the website, the Erasmus Plus website. The second step is obtaining a Participant Identification Code, PIC, in order to access the Participant Portal. The Participant Portal is a single entry point for the electronic administration of EU-funded projects related to Erasmus Plus. You will be prompted to provide information about your organisation as well as upload documents related to your organisation. These documents are required to prove the legal status and financial capacity of your organisation, and it is essential that the information on these documents matches the information on the portal. If your organisation already has a PIC, you should use that one and not create a new one. Please make sure all the information is still up to date. If your organisation does not have a PIC, and please do double check, you will need to obtain one. Please bear in mind that if you are applying for a new PIC, it is important to make sure that you register onto the correct participant portal, as there are several ones. The link provided is for the education, audiovisual, culture, citizenship and volunteering portal on the Erasmus Plus website. However, if you search for the participant portal on the internet, you might come out on the research participant portal. You can find further information about the application process in Part C of the programme guide. Please download the partner mandate templates from our website and have them filled in by your respective partners and signed by both parties. Please make sure that the information, such as the name of the organisation, address, and legal representative on the partner mandate, is identical to the information in the application form. Otherwise, the partner mandate will not be accepted. As we move on to the application eForm. After brainstorming your project idea and following the registration process, you can now move on to the application form. The application form is an eForm and will need to be submitted online by the applicant organisation by the deadline of the 29th of March 2017. Please bear in mind that this is 11 AM UK time, as the deadline for applications is generally 12 PM Brussels time. You will need to use your PIC as well as your partner's PICs to fill out the application form. It is therefore important that the PIC information is correct for all partners, as it will be used throughout the lifetime of your project, and it is your responsibility to keep the information up to date. To make sure you have the correct application form in front of you, you should double check that it states the call 2017 round 1 for the 29th of March 2017 deadline. Applications to the UK National Agency should be completed in English. Please be aware that the application eForm is not compatible with the Adobe version 15.8. I will now pass over to my colleague Zoe, who will go through the application form with you. Okay, I'll just bring up the application form. Okay, and I'll pass over to Zoe.
Okay, good morning everybody. Hello. As I go through the application form, I will use the scroll bar to scroll up and down the page to the relevant sections of the form. I will concentrate on hints and tips for each section of the form as we go through the sections, rather than describing all the information needed. I will then concentrate on the sections dealing with project activities and budget, showing how these link to each other as well, giving you hints and tips on how to complete them. Another important feature of the KA2 application form is that you need to choose what the main objective of your project is. Based on this choice, certain sections in the application form will either appear or disappear, as you'll be able to see now. The two options are development of innovation and exchange of practices. We'll start off by showing you what the eForm looks like for the development of innovation, and then I'll show you the differences with exchange of practices. You will need to select the language you are using to complete the application form from the drop-down menu. For the applications made to the UK&A, this should always be English. Section B1 requires you to detail the title of your project, and there is also an opportunity to type in a project acronym if you have one. Following this, you will need to input your start date and choose the duration of your project. This will automatically fill in the end date for you. The start date must be between the 1st of September and the 31st of December 2017. Section B2 requires you to input the national agency of the applicant organisation. For the UK, this would always be UK01, United Kingdom. Section C, priorities. Here you will have to select the most relevant horizontal or sectoral priority for your project. As you can see, your main priority should be a horizontal or adult education priority for the adult education application form. If you choose a horizontal priority, you will need to explain how it links to the adult education field specifically. You can select up to 2 more priorities, and here you can also select other fields in case your application has a cross-sectoral approach. Now let's shift to the Vocational Education and Training application form. Here, you will have to select the most relevant horizontal or sectoral priority for your project. Section B context must be filled in the same manner as the application form for adult education, but please make sure that you are filling in the right form, as Section C priorities are slightly different for both fields. If you choose a horizontal priority, as with adult education, you will need to explain how it links to the field of VET field specifically. You can select up to 2 more priorities, and here you can also select other fields. in the case your application has a cross-sectoral approach. Section D. Section D1 is for your organisation as the applicant. Section D2 onwards are for any partner organisations that will be included in your project. Please remember that when you input your PIC and your partner's PIC numbers, this information will automatically populate from the information from the participant portal. Check the details are correct, and if you notice any details are incorrect for you or your partners, they will need to be corrected in the portal. You should also check that the information in the partner mandates matches the information in this section for both you and your partner's organisation details. If any of the information in the mandate doesn't match the application form, you'll need to go back to your partner to amend the mandate. Please note that all participating organisations need to be identified in the application form, as you won't be able to add a partner at a later stage. The inclusions of partners from a partner country will need to be justified well, identifying the essential value added to the project. If this condition is not fulfilled, the project will not be considered for selection. It is also important to remember that a better quality application will be specific and name staff members who will be delivering the project and their skills. Please explain how your organisation's previous experience of delivering projects or activities has built the skills and knowledge needed for the activities you propose in this application. Please include details of the people in your organisation. This includes information on geographic location and any additional needs that they might have. In addition, clarify how the activities proposed in the application form fit in with other programmes or activities that your organisation delivers. This will help the assessors understand how the proposal is innovative or complementary to other initiatives that your organisation is already involved in. And finally, please make sure that it is clear from the description of each partner's work and expertise why they have been chosen to participate in your project. This applies to all partners, including smaller organisations which may be involved. Each page of the application has a Validate button, so you can check information as you go. This will identify if any mandatory sections have been missed, and any errors that may be input from the lack of information. As you can see, we need to select what type of organisation our applicant is. Moving on now to Section E. Section E. As well as a description of your project, your application will be of a higher quality if you explain the rationale behind the project, and if you can demonstrate that your project is based on a genuine needs analysis that you or one of your stakeholders or partners has done. Including details of this can also show why you have included certain partners, which would help the assessors understand the choice. Make sure you demonstrate that each transnational face-to-face partner meeting is necessary for achieving the results of your project. Please make sure that the number of partner meetings is appropriate, as assessors consider that hosting more than one partner meeting each could be excessive and less well justified. Show that the planned participants are appropriate to the project activities, as this will support your request for budget under Transnational Project Meeting heading. Make sure your results fit with the objectives of the project and that they are realistic and achievable. You should provide details of which partners will be involved in producing each result and when they will become available. Please make sure that you know what is meant by results. Please go to page 301 of the Programme Guide for the Commission's definition. If you are unsure about what a strategic partnership project can be, have a look at page 288 of the Programme Guide. This gives good examples of strategic partnerships. For adult education, page 289 provides good guidance, and for VET, page 289 to 290 provides good guidance. Section E.1 Participants. A key point to check in this section is the definition of participants with fewer opportunities. You can find out more information on this in the Programme Guide. Section F Preparation. Here you should mention any preparatory activities that will take place before the start of your project. This includes practical arrangements prior to the submission of your application. However, please note that allocated funding cannot cover any costs made before the start date of your project. Section G. Project Management and Implementation, also called PMI. In this section, give as much detail as you can. For example, when describing your monitoring activities, mention how you will coordinate activities within the partnership and how you will identify and resolve any issues and risks within your project. The best quality projects will use qualitative and quantitative indicators of achievement in order to assess whether and to what extent the project has achieved its objectives and results, which help to demonstrate the impact of your project. If you have these in place, please give details in this section. List the indicators and attach numerical targets to quantitative indicators wherever possible. Examples of indicators include measures of skill levels attained to establish the impact of new methods on participants and measures of the quality of the results published. Methods to measure achievement may include surveys, web analytics, and interviews. We will cover the Project Management and Implementation heading in a little more detail later on, as there are aspects which feed into the budget section. It is very important to bear in mind that the data here will need to correspond to the data in the budget section. Otherwise, you will not be able to validate your form. Section G. Intellectual Outputs. As we've selected Development of Innovation, in Section B, Section G1 Intellectual Outputs will appear here. Intellectual outputs are substantial and high-quality tangible outcomes. Each intellectual output is a total result, not a process to reach a result. It can be a product such as a curricular, open education resource, IT tool, analyses, studies or peer learning methods. Dissemination plans or project evaluation reports are not considered as intellectual outputs. So for instance, a general project website is not considered an intellectual output, and costs relating to that website will be covered under the Project Management and Implementation budget heading. Under Development of Innovation, projects we would normally expect to projects we would normally expect you to develop. Under Development of Innovation projects, we would normally expect you to develop intellectual outputs. Therefore, you would select Yes in the drop-down menu to generate the relevant parts of the application that you need to complete. You must ensure that any intellectual output listed meet the eligibility criteria and clearly explain the resources that you will need to produce the planned intellectual outputs. This will be essential to justify your budget request. If you are not planning to develop any intellectual outputs as part of your project, you should consider whether it would be more appropriate to select exchange of practices as the main objective of your project. I'll now show you how to first complete this section to make sure the budget section of the application form completes correctly. Firstly, you will need to include a title, a description of the intellectual output, as well as details of the prep work and methodology for the intellectual output. We recommend you include details here of the type of staff and days required to complete these outcomes. This will prevent potential overlap with manager and administrative staff costs, which normally should be covered under Project Management and Implementation. In addition, if you need to use any subcontractors or to purchase special equipment, you will need to make it clear in this section and claim it under exceptional cost budget. To demonstrate that intellectual outputs are substantial, it may be helpful to explain how you have calculated the resources needed for each intellectual output. You also need to indicate how you will start and end when you will start working and end working on the intellectual output, as well as show which languages the intellectual output will be available in, what type of media it is, and which organisations will be working on it. I'll now talk you through the information that I'm going to input into the form. The fields for the output title, description, tasks, and methodology are all mandatory, so I'm just going to write test here for the purposes of this demonstration. Now we'll select the start and end date. It's important to mention here that we recommend that you use the calendar function in order to input the date in its correct format. Otherwise, the form will not validate. I will now choose the languages the intellectual output will be produced in. And also the format. I will then select which organisations will lead the production of the intellectual output, and any other organisations in the partnership that will work on it. If you make a mistake, you can remove the last option in the list, as you will see now by clicking the minus symbol. And you can add as many intellectual outputs as you require. I'm going to demonstrate this by adding a second intellectual output. Now, for the purpose of this webinar, I'm going to type in Test 2 under the output title, the output description, and the Describe task box. As before, I will now add the date. I will also add the languages and the media. I will also now add the organisations. Section G, Multiplier Events. Multiplier events are only applicable if you plan to deliver intellectual outputs, and they must be national or transnational events aimed specifically at disseminating intellectual outputs. As a result, if there are no intellectual outputs, there can be no multiplier events, and this question won't appear in the application form. Examples of multiplier events are national or transnational conferences, seminars, and general events. Training courses, webinars, piloting sessions and meetings are not considered as multiplier events. A very important point here is that multiplier events cannot take place before an intellectual output has been developed. The main goal of the multiplier event is the dissemination of and general support for the intellectual outputs. They can be used to disseminate other project results as well, but this should never be their main purpose. Multiplier events must take place in countries of the organisations participating in the project. They can also take place at the seat of an institution of the European Union. This can be Brussels, Frankfurt, Luxembourg, Strasbourg and The Hague. This is the case even if none of the participating organisations are from that country. Only participants from organisations other than the beneficiary organisations can be counted in the number of individuals for the purpose of determining the grant amount. These participants can be local, from countries where the event is taking place, or international, from other countries. If you are planning to include multiplier events, choose Yes in the drop-down menu. This will generate the Multiplier Events section of the application form. I'll now talk you through the information that I'll input for multiplier events. Similar to intellectual outputs, you'll need to include a title, a description for any multiplier events. I'm now going to input tests for the demonstration purposes only. I will then select the country the event is taking place in and which intellectual outputs will be disseminated. In this example, I will choose the UK to be the country the event will take place, as the lead organisation, my organisation, is based there. For the dates, please remember that a multiplier event should take place after an intellectual output is finished. As I mentioned previously, all multiplier events must be linked to intellectual outputs, so I'll select the first intellectual output. You will also need to select which organisations are participating in the event. As I have already selected one organisation as the lead, I will select another as a participating organisation. You can add as many multiplier events as you need, but the funding is limited to a maximum of €30,000 per project. Now I will talk you through how to add a second multiplier event and how to complete the relevant boxes on the form. With this event, I will select the other organisation to be the lead. As this organisation is located in Finland, I will select Finland as the country of venue. As before, I will also add participating organisations. Learning, teaching and training activities can be included if they are clearly linked to your project objectives. For example, you might include piloting of your intellectual outputs with the appropriate target groups if this involves a mobility aspect. If you are planning to include learning, teaching and training activities, choose Yes in the drop-down menu. You'll need to choose the appropriate fields and activity type and provide a detailed description. If your project is only focused on adult education, you can expect to see activities only in the field of adult education in this section. The other fields are available as options if you are planning a cross-field project with a focus on adult education. It's important to explain how the activity is adding value to the project and linked to its objectives. I will now talk you through the information for the learning, teaching and training activity. I will choose adult education as the field, and short-term joint staff training events as the activity. As a reminder, the programme guide contains information about the different types of activities that are possible for each field. When you input the number of participants, this is a total number for this activity, which includes participants with special needs and any accompanying persons. You'll need to input the duration in either days or months, which depends on the activity type you have selected. Since I have chosen an activity that can only have a short duration, the box for months is greyed out and can't be typed in. To demonstrate how this will change, I will now change the activity to one which allows long-term durations. Just like with intellectual outputs and multiplier events, you can add as many learning, teaching and training activities that you need with the Add Activity button. Please be aware that learning, teaching and training activities should include participants from beneficiary organisations from at least 2 countries. Section H, Follow-up. Please remember that impact is a very important element in the Erasmus Plus project, and you must therefore show the importance of your proposal on your target groups and beyond, as well as at a local, regional and national and European level. Also, please be aware that at assessment stage, in case of 2 projects scoring the same, we will be looking to compare their individual scores under the impact and dissemination quality criteria. Think about any added value of realising this project on a European level and include this in here. Plan for dissemination activities to take part throughout your project lifetime and not just at the end. For further information, have a look at Annex 2 of the Programme Guide, which provides practical guidance on dissemination of your project. Finally, please demonstrate that dissemination will reach and engage all your partners, stakeholders and also a wider network. I'm now going to move to the budget section. You will find more detailed guidance on how to complete the budget section in our application guidance and in Part B of the Programme Guide. Getting the budget right is essential, as projects with a correct and justified budget are more likely to score highly than those that do not. The maximum total grant available for any strategic partnership in the field of adult education or VET is €450,000. This comes down to €12,500 per month, multiplied by a maximum duration of 36 months. However, the amount you request depends on your activities. It is important to note that the budget under all cost headings is built up on a unit cost basis per participant. This is true except for exceptional costs and special needs support, which are budgeted for and reimbursed on the basis of actual costs. Unit costs are a set amount per participant, which is a contribution towards the cost. For some unit costs, you will spend more, and for some perhaps less than the unit cost. Unit costs are used to help make the funding simpler to understand and to manage. For actual or real costs, as the name suggests, you will receive funding for a proportion of the actual costs incurred. Real costs are always used for budget headings, exceptional costs and special needs support. However, you cannot always claim the full amount. For travel from outermost regions and overseas territories for participants in teaching, learning and training activities, you can claim up to 80% of the eligible costs. For exceptional costs, this is only up to 75% of the eligible cost. One exception to this are special needs support costs, where you can claim up to 100% of the eligible cost. It's important to remember that all projects will have at least a PMI budget and a Transnational Partner Meeting budget. Section I.1, Project Management and Implementation, is based on unit cost. This component of the grant is a contribution to general project management and small-scale project implementation activities. This can be project management, like planning, managing finances, coordination, communication between partners. Also, smaller-scale learning, teaching and training materials, tools and approaches. You can also cover virtual cooperation and local project activities such as classroom project work with learners, work activities, organisation and mentoring of embedded learners or training activities. Finally, activities such as small-scale information, promotion and dissemination activities such as brochures, leaflets and websites are included in this. The amount payable is based on the duration of the strategic partnership and the number of partners involved. €500 per month is payable as a contribution to the activities of the coordinating organisation, and €250 a month for each participating organisation, up to a maximum total of €2,750 per month. You will note that in this case, the projects involving more than 10 participating organisations will be limited to an equivalent payable for 10 participating organisations. This is made up of 1 coordinator and 9 partners, otherwise this will be over the maximum. As you can see in this section, the budget is automatically calculated based on the number of organisations that are included in Section D in the beginning of the application form. Section I2 Transnational Project Meetings is also based on unit cost. This component of the grant is a contribution to travel and subsistence costs for meetings hosted by the participating organisation. You will need to click the plus button to create a line for each meeting. Costs are based on 3 distance bands. You will need to use a distance calculator to fill this out. A link to this is provided in the guidance to applicants. The distance is from cities and towns, so choose the nearest one to your head office and to the head office of your partners. The band that comes up is the band which you will need to input into the application form. This will then automatically populate with the unit cost. This cost is a contribution towards the return journey costs. Please ensure that you put in the right band, as this will be checked at assessment, and if incorrect, it could affect the quality of the application. I'm now going to input the information about the partner meetings that each organisation will attend. You should bear in mind that if you say you are having 5 partner meetings hosted by each partner, then you complete this section with 4 partner meetings each rather than 5, as each partner will host 1 meeting and attend 4 meetings. This sounds obvious, but again this is a common mistake and could affect the quality of each application. In this example, there were a total of 3 meetings planned with each partner hosting 1 each. Now I'm going to switch to the distance calculator to work out the correct distance band. Now we'll begin by inputting the name of the location. The distance calculator works by inputting the town or city that will be the point of departure and arrival for each partner organisation. Our test organisations are based in Birmingham, Helsinki and Barcelona. Clicking the Calculate button provides the distance in kilometres, and it is this number which dictates the distance band you will need to select. As you can see, the distance from Birmingham to Helsinki and from Birmingham to Barcelona will fall into the same distance band, so I will now switch back to the application form to input this information. In this case, the UK organisation will attend 2 meetings within the same distance band, so both of these meetings can be included in one row. I will now go back to the distance calculator to check the distance between the Finnish and Spanish organisations. As you can see, the distance between Helsinki and Barcelona will qualify for a different distance band. Now I will switch back to the eForm and input each meeting for these 2 organisations in separate rows. After inputting the information about this, it will automatically generate. Intellectual outputs. The funding under this heading can only be used for staff costs for the organisation directly involved in the production of intellectual outputs, and this must be clearly justified in the body of the application. It's important to mention here that staff costs for manager and administrative days are expected to be covered under the Project Management and Implementation section, unless the development of the intellectual output is identified as a distinctly separate role for managers and administrative staff in question. This should be clearly justified, as otherwise the cost for this budget heading will be cut. I will now add the budget information for the 2 intellectual outputs that were created earlier in the application form. As mentioned previously, the information you add in the budget section should be clearly reflected in the earlier sections. You should add a new row for any change in the organisation, change in the intellectual output, staff category, or number of days to ensure the budget completes correctly. Now I will include a small number of manager days for output 1. Please bear in mind, if you do include any manager or administrative days, please clearly justify these, otherwise they may be cut. As I complete each row, you can see that the budget is automatically filled in. The costs are generated by the category of staff and number of days should be clearly linked to the description of the intellectual outputs in Section G above. Section 4 relates to Multiplier Events. This budget heading is only applicable to projects planning to organise national and/or transnational events aimed at disseminating intellectual outputs produced by the project. Therefore, a project which does not plan to deliver intellectual outputs cannot be awarded funding under this budget heading. Please be aware that the costs for travel and subsistence of the representatives of the participating organisations are not included in this. Important to note as well, is that it's only participants from organisations other than the beneficiary organisation that can be counted in the number of individuals for purpose of determining the grant amount. These participants can be local, meaning from the country where the event is taking place, or international, from other countries. The cost should be clearly linked to the description of the multiplier event in section G above, and as mentioned earlier on, multiplier events should not take place before an intellectual output they have referred to has been developed. The costs are calculated on a unit cost basis, up to a maximum of €30,000 per project. I will now add the budget information for the first two multiplier events. Once again, it is important to use a different row based on any information that you are entering. For multiplier events, you should use a different row for any change in the organisation or a change in the multiplier event. You don't need to use a different row for local and international participants, as long as the organisation and multiplier event are the same. I will add one row for my organisation. And add two rows for another organisation. Strategic KMO will be including participants in both multiplier events. This is also why KMO has international participants for E1, since this multiplier event will be based in the UK and their participants will be from Finland. Section 5, Learning, Teaching, Training Activities, is based on unit cost. Funding should only be requested under this budget heading when your project intends to deliver transnational training, teaching or learning activities within the strategic partnership. The added value of these mobility activities needs to be addressed in the body of application form. There are a few subheadings under this section. Travel. This is a contribution to the travel costs of participants, including accompanying persons from their place of origin to the venue of their activity and the return journey. You will also have to use a distance calculator for this, but the form uses different rates when you enter the distance. I'll now input travel information using a row for the participants from each organisation. Please note, when you are completing your application form, you will need to use a distance calculator again to check which distance band to use. Here, I have ensured that the number of participants included matches the total number of participants included earlier in the form. This is very important because any inconsistencies here would affect either your grant requested and even prevent you from validating the form. The duration of these activities should exclude travel days. However, if participants will be travelling a long distance for any activity, it is possible to request individual support for up to 3 days. For up to 2 travel days. If applicable, an extra 2 days can be added for the duration of activity in the budget section, along with a clear explanation to justify the reasons behind doing so in the description box. Here, the contribution for participants partaking in any long or short-term activity will be calculated. Depending on the duration of the activity, accompanying persons should be listed separately on the right-hand side. If duly justified in the application form, a participant can be entitled to receive 2 travel top-ups for expensive domestic travel costs to participant within the same mobility activity. This includes 1 to reach a main hub or airport, and 1 to reach a remote final destination within the receiving country. This top-up is mainly aimed at difficult-to-reach remote areas, where domestic travel is more difficult. This will need to be explained in detail within the application form, and it only applies to domestic travel costs of over €225. Remote areas are understood as places which are difficult to reach, for example, mountainous areas, islands or isolated towns where there is a significantly limited availability of motorways, railways or bus routes. In some cases, travel between neighbouring countries to reach a hub may be possible. For example, if the airport is closer or easier to reach in a neighbouring country, it therefore presents better value for money. In all cases where top-ups are requested, clear justification must be provided within the application form. Since the activity we chose earlier was for a long-term duration, I will complete the long-term section. The form will not allow you to add a short-term activity under this section. If you're trying to complete the long-term section and no learning, teaching and training activities are available for you to choose, you should check the earlier section of the form to make sure you selected the correct activity and input the correct duration in the correct box. Once again, I have made sure that the number of participants and accompanying persons matches the information in the earlier section of the form. Linguistic support. This is a contribution to costs associated with language support. Linguistic support can be offered to participants to improve their knowledge of the language of the host country in order to support their active participation. Any costs requested under this budget heading must be clearly justified within the body of the application. The application won't allow you to request linguistic support if you don't have learning, teaching and training activities that meets the minimum duration. If you need to add linguistic support but the form won't let you, you should check Section G, where you input all the learning, teaching and training activity details. Exceptional costs. If the partnership includes partners from outermost regions, ORs, and overseas territories and countries, OCTs, and they are requesting funding for transnational teaching, training and learning activities, it is possible to claim additional travel costs under this heading. Please note that you are only able to request additional funding where the travel band selected does not cover 70% of the real costs. This needs to be clearly justified within the application form. In such cases, you can request up to 80% of the travel estimated eligible costs. This funding is intended as a contribution travel to expensive travel costs, both to and from outermost regions and overseas countries and territories. It is important to note here that the number of participants here need to match the numbers put into the descriptive part in Section G. If this is not the case, the form will not validate, so please double check this. Section I.6 Special Needs Support. This budget heading is only applicable if you plan to involve participants with special needs in your project. This results in additional costs. This component of the grant is based on an estimate of the likely actual costs relating specifically to the needs of your participants with disabilities. In the budget section, you will need to identify the activities that the requested cost relates to. The participation of individuals with special needs must also be justified in the main body of the application form. You can claim up to 100% of these real costs. As a reminder, a person with special needs is defined under Erasmus Plus as a potential participant whose physical, mental or health-related situation is that his or her participation in the project would not be possible without extra financial support. Section I.7 Exceptional Costs. This budget heading relates exclusively to actual costs relating to subcontracting or purchase of goods or services that cannot be delivered or provided by organisations participating in the project. Any costs requested under this heading must be clearly justified within the application form. Where such costs are justified, 75% of the eligible costs will be payable with up to a maximum of €50,000 per project. For example, if €1,000 is requested for exceptional costs, only 75% of this will be granted, which will amount to a total of €750. We've had previous applicants budgeting for visa costs for partners, staff and participants under this category. However, visa costs are not considered exceptional costs under this specific key action. If they are for staff members of the participating organisations, they should be covered under PMI. If they are for participants attending a multiplier event, they should come under this category. If participants in learning, teaching and training activities need a visa, you will need to absorb this cost in costs associated to these activities. In respect to special needs support and exceptional cost descriptions, the application form allows you to write up to 5,000 characters. So please ensure that these requests for these costs are clearly described and justified within the application form. Section J, Project Summary. This summary will be used by the European Commission and the national agency in their publications, and this will also feed into the Erasmus Project Results platform. Please make sure that this is written bearing this in mind. It should be written in clear, plain English, avoiding any technical or sector-specific language to ensure that it can be understood by the general public. Sections J1 to J21 is a summary of participant organisations, the budget and the project total grant. Please check that the information in this section is absolutely correct. If it is not, you can make amendments in the earlier sections. Please make sure that your grant requested amount does not exceed the maximum allowance grant, which is €12,500 multiplied by the amount of months you've applied for. Just moving now to the annexes. Section N is the compulsory annexes. Compulsory annexes are the signed declaration of honour, the scanned mandates of each participating organisation to the applicant, signed by both parties, and a completed timetable of activities, also called the project timetable spreadsheet. These documents can be downloaded from the website and signed as described in the FAQs on the Erasmus Plus website. Your project application will be ineligible without these attachments. I'll now switch to a completed timetable. The timetable uses the same letters that appear in the application form for intellectual outputs, multiplier events, and learning, teaching and training activities. Some activities don't have a letter in the application, but these are explained in the box underneath the timetable. It's a good idea to use these letters throughout your application when covering any project management and implementation activities like Skype meetings, local project activities, and dissemination activities. As you can see, we've coloured in the cells to show which months each activity will take place in. This should correspond to the information that you include in your application form. I'm now going to switch back to the application form. If there is still some room for attachments once these three are attached, you are able to attach other relevant annexes such as needs analysis and sample work programs. A tip here is to keep it concise. We expect all the information that is key to the quality and content of your project to be included within the main body of the application form. Now, before we continue on to the submission part, I just want to show you what happens if you select exchange of practices as the main objective of your project. Up until Section G, Implementation, the eForm looks the same. However, as you can now see, The sections for intellectual outputs and multiplier events are now missing. The application form has jumped straight to learning, teaching and training activities, and the numbering is therefore slightly different. Here, in the budget section as well, the sections on intellectual outputs and multiplier events are missing. I'm now going to switch back to the presentation and my colleague Alan will continue.
Thank you, Zoe. I'll move on to the application requirements now. Once we have received your application, we will check its eligibility. Your application will not go forward to assessment if your start and end date, as well as the project duration, are not in line with the criteria specified in the programme guide on page 113, or if your budget requested from Erasmus Plus is more than the maximum, if you do not have the minimum number of programme country partners, or if you submitted your application after 11 AM on the 29th of March 2017. As part of the assessment process, the national agency will also check that the requested budget is in line with the funding rules set out in Part B of the programme guide. If these rules are not respected, your requested budget may be reduced on assessment. Please make sure that you carefully read the programme guide and the national agency guidance available on our website for further details on the eligibility requirements before you submit your application. The Erasmus Plus National Agency will be validating your organisation and your partner organisations. However, this is a separate process and not linked to the assessment of your application. Therefore, your organisation being validated does not imply a successful outcome of your application. During the validation process, we will check whether all the information you have input into the participant portal is correct and complete. We will check whether the required legal and financial forms have been uploaded, as well as the supporting documentation. For 2017, supporting documents will need to include a VAT certificate for all companies that are applying for funding. The verification of the financial capacity does not apply to public bodies and international organisations. In cases of EU grant requests submitted by other types of organisations and not exceeding €60,000, you must provide a declaration of honour certifying that you have the financial capacity to implement the project. This declaration of honour constitutes a specific section of the application form. In cases of EU grant requests submitted by other types of organisations and exceeding €60,000, you must submit your organisation's most recent profit and loss account and balance sheet. For entities which cannot provide the above documents because they are newly created, a financial declaration or an insurance declaration stating the applicant's professional risks may replace the above documents. Please note, organisations that are not validated may not be able to take part in Erasmus Plus funded projects. You or your partners not being able to provide the correct or complete documents can cause significant delays to the contracting process and can even result in the NA withdrawing its offer of funding. Therefore, please ensure you are clear about the requirements and communicate these to your partners as early as possible. Moving on to the application budget, some key points to remember are the maximum budget is a variable amount defined by multiplying €12,500 per month for the duration of the project with a maximum of €450,000 for 36 months. The grant is a contribution to project costs based on either unit costs or real cost budget items. When a contribution is based on unit costs of funding will be automatically calculated depending on the unit. For example, this can be the number of participants for a certain duration or a set cost per distance travelled. Budget headings using unit costs are project management and implementation, transnational project meetings, intellectual outputs and multiplier events, under learning, teaching and training activities, travel, individual support and linguistic support are also contributions based on unit costs. Contributions based on real costs apply for the following budget headings: special needs support and exceptional costs, as well as exceptional costs under learning, teaching and training activities. Special needs support can be up to 100% of eligible costs. However, for exceptional costs, this is 75%. For expensive travel costs of participants from outermost regions and overseas countries and territories under learning, teaching and training activities, you can request up to 80% of eligible costs. Your budget should be appropriate to your activity and demonstrate cost-effective use of resources. Several of the budget lines are conditional on you demonstrating added value, and you will need to justify, especially for real costs, why you are requesting a certain amount of funding. Please note, for strategic partnerships supporting exchange of good practice, it is not possible to request a budget for intellectual outputs or multiplier events. When completing your application form, it is each applicant's responsibility to ensure that all activities are delivered as set out in their submitted application form. As stated within the programme guide, the applicant must indicate in the relevant section of the application form the sources and the amounts of any funding received or applied for in the year, whether for the same project or for any other project, including operating grants. In addition to this, identical or very similar applications submitted by the same applicant or by other partners of the same consortium will be subject to a specific assessment in order to exclude the risk of double funding. The following documents must be annexed to the application form and signed as described in the FAQs on the Erasmus Plus website. The Declaration of Honour, signed by the legal representative mentioned in the application form, the mandates of each partner to the applicant, signed by both parties' legal representatives, and with information identical to the information about the partners in the application form, as well as the project timetable template. We recommend that you scan different documents together into a single file. If, after checking that the annexes are within the size and file format limits, you're still experiencing problems with attaching annexes, you can email them through to erasmusplus@acorus.com, clearly stating which application form they relate to by providing the application hash code and your organization's details, as well as the project's name, but please only do this as an exception and ensure that you have followed all the available guidance first. To summarize the process and some of the key details to bear in mind, beginning with the eForm, the deadline for the submission of all applications is the 29th of March 2017 at 11 AM UK time. The key documents to be uploaded alongside the application form include the Legal Entity Form, LEF, Financial Identification Form, FIF, and recent account information to demonstrate financial activity. Please note, transaction details can be blocked out from viewing on bank statements if this would like to be withheld due to confidentiality reasons. Next, a reminder that the maximum grant for any KA2 VET project and adult education project is €450,000 for 36 months, i.e. up to €12,500 per month. And finally, annexes will need to include the Declaration of Honour signed by the legal representative, mandates for each partner, and a timetable of activities. Now we move on to the final stage, the submission of your application form. Firstly, you must ensure that all sections of the application form have been validated, and you will need to be connected to the internet in order to submit your completed application. You must also ensure that all sections of the form are valid and all annexes are attached before submitting the form. If there are any technical issues preventing the form from being submitted, it will say error under status. If this happens and you are unable to submit the form, you should follow the alternative submission procedure as described in the guide for applicants. In this case, you can still submit your application by sending it via email to us within 2 hours of the official deadline. However, the UK National Agency will only accept alternative submission if the error message is recorded under status in the submission summary section of the eForm with a timestamp prior to or on the deadline date and time. The following error messages are not accepted as technical issues: Error 1, Error 6, Unknown, Local 01 and Local 02. Please note that the National Agency is aware of an issue with the form. If your application does not include any teaching, training and learning activities, you may receive the error message ERR KA2-01 Submission Validation Error when you try to validate and submit the application form. To find out how to rectify this error, please go to page 62 in our 2017 Guide for Applicants version 3, which is available on our website. A couple more hints and tips before we conclude. Before and whilst you complete your application, please refer to the Commission's documents, first of all the Programme Guide and the National Agency's own guidance available from our website. If you have applied before, don't forget to review the feedback you have received from us, as this will include key areas of improvement which will enhance your chances of submitting a good quality application. Please remember that only one application can be submitted by the same partnership under the 29th of March deadline. Please save the form frequently so no information is lost. Ensure correct options are selected on the application so important sections aren't deleted. And as I have said before, whilst checking through your application form, double check that the budget you have requested is accurate and well justified, and that you respect the maximum amounts allowed. Provide relevant answers to the questions in the application, but remember there is a character limit on many of the sections. You can see the limit by hovering your mouse over the answer boxes. A good idea is to get someone else to proofread your application and annexes, perhaps against the published award criteria. And finally, leave enough time for completing and submitting your application well before the deadline of the 29th of March 2017. For applicants who have previously been unsuccessful, we have a checklist to help support you with the resubmission of your application. Firstly, ensure you have not submitted the application form from a previous call year without making any changes. Please take on board all application feedback and assess the comments and amend your application accordingly. Another crucial check will be the 2017 core documents, particularly the 2017 Programme Guide and Guide for Applicants. The inclusion of new programme objectives and priorities should be taken into consideration when completing your application. In addition, the Erasmus Plus team is always on hand to advise on any queries or issues that you may have. On a final note, we cannot guarantee a revised version of your application will be automatically granted approval. The Erasmus Plus programme is highly competitive, and all applications undergo a thorough assessment process before being granted funding. Finally, the next steps. I'd like to conclude by reminding you of the support the UK National Agency will be offering in the run-up to the deadline. This will include, on the 14th of March, a live question and answer session. Please register through our website as early as possible to avoid disappointment, as the number of places is limited. Please also use this opportunity to send us your questions in advance. A detailed guide for applicants on how to complete the application form is also available on our website. If you haven't already done so, please sign up to our newsletter, as this provides all the most up-to-date information about the call and Erasmus Plus programme. On our website you can also find other key documents, for example the project timetable spreadsheet, timetable of activities, so we recommend you have a look at those. Finally, we would just like to remind you that we do have a helpline available where our team is available from Monday to Friday to answer any queries that you may have. Have a look at the contact number on this slide and also the helpline email address below on this slide as well. Finally, thank you for your attention, and we hope that you have a very successful application this year. Thank you very much for listening.